Welcome to the Hunt Test Hobo podcast, your place for truckside chats and insights into the retriever game. Whether you're just getting started or you're a seasoned handler, this podcast is another resource for tips, tricks, and insights from both the amateurs and professional trainers' perspectives. Each week, we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of retriever training, sharing stories of success, overcoming challenges, and forging stronger bonds with our dogs. This is the Hunt Test Hobo podcast. I'm Chris Rud, your host, fellow retriever enthusiast, and student of the game. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Hunt Test Hobo podcast. I am super stoked because I just drove 3 hours to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Bill Hillman. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
We've only been talking for a very short time, but when you told me you were just outside of Madison, and that was within striking distance of having a good conversation with you, I was like, we got to figure this out. So excited that we're doing this together. I've been a massive, massive fan of all the YouTube videos that you've been putting out. How long have you been doing that?
Maybe 15 years.
15 years. So you're like one of the OGs of YouTube. Like, they should reach out to you and be like, hey, we're going to do a documentary.
They don't reach out.
They don't reach out to you?
No. They reach out to the people with 30 million subscribers, you know.
Yeah.
So.
But, you know, 30 million, you know, and then what do you got? Like a couple 100,000?
I don't know.
You got to be close to, I mean, you got at least 100,000, don't you?
I don't even watch my own videos.
Yeah, that's like me. I don't watch any of my own podcasts.
No, it's embarrassing.
Somebody was asking me like, so how long does it take you to edit them? And then you even asked me the same question. I was like, I don't. I make a note if like something like really bad happened, like the recording stopped or whatever. But if nothing like that happened, you just let it roll because the name of the game is volume, my friend. It's volume. You got to just keep putting out good content. And so, Bill, thank you for being on the podcast.
It's my pleasure.
I have grown up as a very adamant student of the game. I love learning. Anytime that there's any sort of content out there, I am just trying to get it, watch it, and just digest it all. And finding your YouTube channel at the point of where I just like was getting through the transition with my first real dog. You know, I had another dog that, you know, I just learned how to do certain things with, but having that dog in transition and then discovering a lot of the drills that you had was like so refreshing. And it really showed me the way to do water in a program. It was the first time I've actually seen a step-by-step program for how to teach quality water for whatever game you're playing, whether it's a hunt test or field trials. So I'm just really excited to do this. But I probably watched every one of your videos at least once, but I still don't know like how you got into the game or any of like the backstory. So like, did you like find a lab on the side of the road and pick it up and then take it to a trial and win, or like how did you get started?
Actually, I wanted to have a dog as a kid, and I wasn't allowed to have one. My mother I think she was afraid of dogs, and she figured that if I had a dog, she'd have to take care of it. So all through school, when I was at home, I was not allowed to have a dog, but I read incessantly. I read probably 80% of all the dog books ever written, but I couldn't have a dog. So when I'd left home finally to go to school, my first stop was the Humane Society, and I got a dog.
What kind of dog was it?
It was I paid $6 was the fee, and it was a German Shepherd, and her name was Sail.
Sail.
And my second dog, well, I had at that point I started having all kinds of dogs. If you name it, I had one of them.
Wow.
And so
did you play other games before the retriever game? Did you, or just anyway? I shouldn't have stopped. Keep going.
Other games like
agility.
Football.
I
did a lot of football.
You did a lot of football?
No, I didn't play any other games. I trained problem dogs. I was walking down the street one day with the dog at heel, and this lady came out and she said, man, you think you could help teach my dogs to do that? I said, I think I could. And she said, well, how much would you charge for that? And I said, probably about $15. And she had a little much, and I started working, and I got it to heel and sit and everything. And that was kind of the beginning. And I'm thinking, this is fun. I like to do this. And then when I went into the military, I had a situation where I was training dogs on the side, problem dogs. And every problem you can imagine, dogs that were vicious, dogs that were biting their owners, dragging them around, barking. Any problem, I got called. And I had a side business when I was in the military I had a route where I'd go house to house and train, so I didn't have to have a kennel. I had the dogs, left them at home. And when I got out of the military, I moved to San Francisco, and I was a photographer, basically, was my main vocation. And I was photographing sailboat races in San Francisco. But I wasn't making any money at it. So I put an ad in the San Francisco Chronicle, and it said, dog training in your home, results guaranteed, and a phone number.
The results guaranteed is what did it, right?
Oh, yeah. And, I had all sorts of, one of my memorable first clients was a family that had a Doberman Pinscher in the basement. It had been down there a year. It was mean.
Yeah.
They couldn't get down there. They throw food down, but that dog had been down there for a year.
Oh my gosh.
And they said, can you go down there and get that dog?
What was going through your mind? You're like, this is like some episode of like some crazy documentary, and you're just one of the victims.
So this dog, I started halfway down the stairs and it was growling and snarling. And of course, I had a baseball mitt in one hand so I could protect myself. But I got down there and I got that dog out of there. And so I usually had a route of 10 or 12 dogs. In fact, it got successful enough that I had to have some assistant trainers. And I think it was the beginning of a concept that, that was in the early 70s. And now every big city has that service. But I think I dreamed it up. I'm not sure, but I think so.
In your little world, you definitely did, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing new under the sun, but it might have been over on that hemisphere that it came into existence. Well, before we get too deep into the story, I just want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank the Hunt Test Guide and Purina. Purina has been a great partner for the Hunt Test Hobo podcast. So if you're looking for some great food, make sure that you are checking out or feeding Purina Pro Plan. Chicken and rice. That's what I do. And maybe that's what you should do if you're not. So anyhow, thanks, Bill, for that intro. That's how you kind of got into the dog world, which your story is pretty similar. So your mom told you couldn't have a dog. Well, my wife told me I couldn't have a dog. Yeah. But I was relentless for 6 months, and not as probably as long as you went through, but I did the same thing. That's where I first found you, was even before I had a dog. I didn't understand anything you were doing yet, but like I saw the Great Outdoor Games. I had watched that on YouTube with the SRS, and then I had seen a lot of Freddie King stuff I was looking at, and then I was just there's this one guy in Kentucky. I don't know who he is now, or I haven't watched anything because he was a behavioral dog guy. And I was really impacted by what he was doing. And he had a dog named No Name, and I always thought that was really funny. He's just like, No Name. It was his only personal dog in all of his dogs, and he called it No Name. But I was very much in that same boat where I was like, I got to read every single thing. I got a Dawkins retrieving book. Like I had like 3 other books that I had read, and still did not think my wife was going to let me get one, but I was prepared if she ever finally said yes. And I think she just got really tired of me asking. And then she said, fine.
Persistence.
Yeah. It's annoying is what it is. Just be really annoying, and eventually it'll go away. But now, we have 4 dogs. We do a little bit of breeding, and she loves it. Like, she's all about it. So I feel like I just forced her into something that she loves. Well, anyhow, sorry. So you started to do what you were doing with the dogs in California. Where'd it go from there?
Well, when I got out of the service...
what service? What
was in the Air Force.
In the Air Force? What would you do?
I was in... actually, I was in supply. I did not fly fighter jets or anything like that.
Is that what you wanted to do when you signed up?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience, I can tell you that. But the thing that got me into field trials was that when I was in San Antonio in the Air Force, I met a guy that was in the Air Force, but he was also a dog trainer on the side. And I went to his training session, and he was training a little dog, and he had a triple set out there. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And so I watched him. I said, well, I can do that. So I decided that's what I wanted to do. And the long and the short of it, I bought a retriever puppy. And I said, the thing that's going to make me able to be successful is to have a high point Derby dog. And I made that declaration
with your first dog?
With my first retriever.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I had a International Scout with a 4-cylinder motor, a stick shift, and that dog in the front seat. And I went all over America, and I ended up with a high point Derby dog, Sunday Hawkeye. And that was her name. And she was named after my boat, which was Hawkeye, which was like Brownie Hawkeye, the camera.
Okay.
And so they tied together, and that's how it started.
Yeah. So it's always around the water. And then you hit the boat, and then you get your dog.
Yeah, Water Dog, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the first book I got, Water Dog, by, what was his?
I don't
Richard Walters, yeah.
Yep.
I got that with the dog, and off we went.
Was that pre-collar days? Like
that was basically right at the cusp.
Yeah.
About half the professional trainers used the electric collar, and the other half didn't, and it was quite a controversial thing at the time.
Yeah.
Right in the late 70s and early 80s. That's when people were, now virtually everybody uses
the collar. I was talking, I train at Sharon Gearman's place down in Morris, and she, she's up there in years, and she was telling me about how that whole transition happened, and I was like, it blew my mind to even think that, like, oh yeah, I know somebody pre-collar. But now I'm like realizing it wasn't actually that long ago. It just seems like a long time ago to a young guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember a lot of the old professional trainers, they didn't use collars, but then they eventually
figured out they had to.
I remember one of the great trainers, Jay Sweezy. One time he came to training and he says, Billy, he says, guess what? He says, I'm going to let my fingers do the walking. And at that time, that was the slogan for the Yellow Pages. And let my fingers do the walking. Well, he related that to using his fingers on the electric collar.
Yeah,
so he said, basically, I'm going to start using the electric collar. And so, but eventually, every pro began to use the electric collar.
Wow. So first dog, high point Derby dog. How many other high point Derby dogs have you made?
I think 7.
7.
Yeah.
And Shadow was the last one, right?
Shadow was the last one.
Yeah. And that was a really, if you guys haven't, those that are listening, haven't watched, but I don't know if you have a specific playlist, but you just type in Watermark Shadow on YouTube. You can watch Bill train the dog from 4-month-old. I think, well, you started showing it like, it wasn't quite a baby. He wasn't quite a baby. He was maybe 4 months, 4 or 5 months.
Yeah,
he was young, but then you see the progression and that when I saw what you were doing with Shadow, and specifically when you were doing your drive around marks, and I saw the dog doing that, and I don't think he picked it up clean. I think you had to walk out and help him in the video that you showed, and I was like, that was what really inspired me to really try to study the young dog program a lot, because I was so impressed that he wasn't through what the traditional force fetch model was at that point, but to see him doing all that and you're doing like a full T with him and you're doing all these things with him, and he was just so far developed. And I was like, wow, because I never would have thought you could get that far. That was it was so inspiring to see that. It was really, really impressive.
Well, you know, in the early days, there wasn't a program. You know, you started throwing bumpers and then trying to get the dog to sit and stop on the whistle. And one of the things that Rex Carr did for the game of field trials was establish a sequence, a learning sequence, and which I became familiar with. And I made certain adjustments from that based on my own temperament and the way I thought dogs should be trained. You know, dogs to me are, you know, they're part of a family. It's not just something you own to play a game. It's a family thing, and you develop a relationship with them, and that relationship is what helps you go forward. And even when I was training dogs professionally, I tried to develop that relationship with every dog that I had. And I think it's crucial to have that. Some people do and some people don't, but it involves developing trust and focus and all sorts of things that people don't even talk about when they talk about dog training. They talk about single tee and force fetch and getting in the water and stuff. But to me, the critical thing is teaching a dog to focus on me. That's step one. They must focus on me. I tell the story all the time, you know, that if a teacher goes into a classroom and the kids are all talking and on their cell phones and writing notes, and the teacher's standing up there, you know, feels helpless. But if the teacher walks in the room and those students are glued on him and focused, then you can teach them something. So step one is always trying to get the dog to focus on you, realizing that unless he does what you want, he can't get what he wants.
Yeah.
That's the essence, to me, of good training. That's step one. And I think a lot of trainers just don't even think about that. Mm-hmm. They just start trying to make a dog do something instead of teaching him how to do it and how great it is to do the right thing. So,
very good. So you're just talking about that bond and the family members. How many dogs are you training at a time that are yours?
That are mine?
Well, or
right now,
anyway,
one. But when I was training professionally, I really didn't have any that were mine. I mean, I was sometimes raising a puppy or something like that, but I didn't, you know, have my own dogs. When most pros don't have their own dogs unless they're
well, I was
starting
thinking more
a puppy.
In the when did you stop training others?
Oh, like 20 years ago.
Yeah. So in those 20 years, how many dogs at a time have you had?
Usually one.
Usually one.
And when it gets a certain age, either they go somewhere else with another person, or maybe you start a puppy or something like that. But I think one or two dogs is
a good number for you.
Is plenty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of work. It depends on how much time you have.
Yeah.
And, you know, this relationship you can get with one dog is entirely different than when you have a pack of dogs. I mean, it's a totally different experience.
And there's a lot of things that I feel like I see you do that I think is building on that. One that comes to mind just watching is so often you get done with your set, you hook the dog up to your truck to dry off or air out, and you put the dog away. But I've watched you, just doing that walk. You call walking and talking. Like I just hear that in my head, walking and talking, and you're just walking around and throwing bumpers. Like, and I like that, and I do that, and I make time for that as much as I can, because I feel like there's even a lot of technical things I think that the dog develops from that. They're so often for looking for a gun, watching that mark, and that is just another scenario where it's not in that format, and they're looking for this bird that's in the air, and it really helps, like I feel like, develop them to look and to find that bird in the air, and I think it develops better markers because they're focused on nothing but that bird that you just huck that isn't necessarily in a relationship with you. And I was saying that more in like, I can see that walking and talking though, just hanging out just really builds that bond. Are there other things that you try to do that to build that bond that maybe people don't see because it just doesn't make sense to have in a video? Give them a lot of cheeseburgers?
Well, I think the whole process of having a dog, feeding the dog, taking the dog for a walk, having it behave themselves when guests come over, this whole thing that, a kennel dog just isn't going to get that part of life.
Yeah.
That a house dog can. And most dogs that are in competition today are not in a house, they're in a kennel. And I think that's a little sad in a way, because I think what fun is it to have a dog but you don't have him with you? Mm-hmm. Having him with you is the fun part.
Spoken like a true amateur, Bill.
Yeah, when I was training professionally, everybody thought I was acted like an amateur with my dogs, because there were still, even when I had a lot of dogs in training, they still circulated through the house, every one of them. And I taught them to watch TV and just sit still and be part of a family, because they need that. I think they need that part of life.
Is there a specific part of the life of the dog's life? Like, so, you mentioned that, the dogs might eventually go off and do other things, but what is your favorite part of that? Is it all of it, or is there specific aspects that you really, really enjoy?
The greatest moments in training is when somehow you see courage or a dog struggling to do what you taught him to do, and especially when it's in competition. To me, the feeling you have, whatever that is, whatever you'd call that, that's the ultimate. When it's like the last series and they're going for the last bird and it's a long swim and they're struggling, and to me, that's the joy of it. Other than just being with dogs, it's just fun to train. And I like training. I like training more than competition as far as the experience, except I personally like competition. Once I get into it, I'm not a very graceful loser. I don't like it much.
Yeah, I don't think there's not too many people that like to lose. Maybe there's other people that can cover it up better than you. But
yeah, there are people that get good at it, though.
And you're saying that's not you?
I don't like that part of it. So
I'll never. You probably don't remember this, but when we ran a derby together in Madison, and it was the 4 series, we were up on the hill looking down at the pond. I can't remember which property it was, but I was a little, like we were talking beforehand, I was a little starstruck, right? And I remember, like, before I walked, I was like, hey, Bill, because you were behind me. I think you were running Rainbow behind me or something. I was like, hey, Bill, if you see me do anything, just you want to give me any pointers, I'm open to feedback. Do you remember what you said to me?
No.
No? Okay. And I've been meaning to this day to ask you more about this. But I went off, I ran the dog, he did fine. We weren't going to win. We had a decent hunt on the first bird in the land, but did great the rest of it. We picked up our 2 birds in the 4th, and I walk off, and you said, come here. And you said, hey, when you bend over to send your dog, don't let your whistle hang and flap. just grab it a little bit. And to this day, I've been trying to find out, was he serious? Like, that's something I should do? Or was he just making fun of me in a funny way? So do you remember, like, would you have been serious or
The reason
not?
I wouldn't remember that is because I tell everybody that.
Is that like, that's a standing joke?
No, it's not a joke. It's a mistake people make. They bend over and that dog is got that thing dangling in front of his head, and it's got to be a huge distraction.
Okay, that's what it is. I've been trying to, for the longest time, to okay.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to follow up with you. I was like, was he serious?
It should be in your mouth or in your hand, not dangling.
Okay.
Or in your coat about 3 layers down when it's cold and the dog takes off in the wrong direction and you're trying to discover where your whistle is.
Where your whistle is. Okay. That's been in the back of my mind for quite a while. I've been trying to find out.
Now you know.
Now I know.
Now you're good.
I'm glad that we unpacked that scenario. It makes sense, the dangling, I stand pretty far behind my dogs. I don't think they can see it, but I'm going to look next time and see. And then,
well, that's another problem you have.
Yeah.
Standing too far back, because then you're not as connected as if you're...
Nose to toes, as I've heard somebody say a few times.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to text you some videos, and you can just beat me up with more whistle tips. All right, so I have a ton of questions, but is there anything that you feel that if the most common problem that you see in the training world? Let's not necessarily talk about the day of a trial, but when you train with new people, what is the most common mistake that you think is something that if more people just knew that they were doing this mistake, that they would have more success with their dogs?
Oh, there's 4 or 5 that are huge.
Okay, well, we got time, so go through all 4.
Well, one of them is giving a command the dog's not going to do.
Yeah.
Is the most ridiculous mistake you can make. The dog is running away from you. He's not trained to come on the here command. He doesn't know any commands, and you're saying here, here, here as the dog gallops away from you. You're teaching the dog not to come on command.
Yeah.
Now, why do you want to do that? That's the question.
Why do you want to...
Teach the dog not to come on command.
Yeah.
You don't. So you don't give a command the dog's not going to do.
Yeah.
It's a little puppy, for instance, goes in the water and gets out of the water. He's going to shake, drop the bumper and whatnot. And you're saying, here, hold, and he's not going to do any of those commands.
Yeah.
But you're saying them anyway. So the dog learns from an early age that it's okay to totally disregard anything you say to him. Now, to me, that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to get over it. One of the other biggest mistakes I see is that people try to do things in training the dog's not trained to do. Mm-hmm. It's over their head. They're not prepared.
Yeah, the famous last words. We're just going to try it.
I think my dog can do it, but if he doesn't do it, what are you going to do? So now he's developing a whole bunch of bad habits that you're not equipped or prepared to correct. So you're going downhill before you're going forward. So I think it's very important to understand where your dog is in the training sequence, and then inch forward a little bit at a time. It's like if you lift the baby calf every day, he's light. And all of a sudden, you're lifting a 600-pound calf.
Did that work out for you, Bill? Did you try that?
I haven't tried it, but it's kind of like that in dog training. If you do a little bit every day and get a little bit better, you'll keep getting better. But if you take all this haphazard giant steps and go forward and backward with no plan, it just makes the end result much, much more difficult. So I think that's a very common, and it's just not good dog training to attempt something the dog isn't prepared for, ready for, and you don't have the tools to do anything about it, to correct it.
I heard somebody say once, I think it was my friend Dan, he said, never give a command you can't enforce. And to enforce, they have to know, and they have to understand why they are complying with whatever consequence that they have.
Yeah, that's an excellent statement to make. Don't give a command you can't enforce. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was 1. We got 5 to do, right?
No, wasn't that 2?
Maybe it was 2. I can't count either.
The other thing is when a dog does make a mistake, or you're trying to teach a lesson.
Oh yeah, it was don't put a dog in a situation they're not ready to handle. That was 2.
Yeah.
For those listening, that's number 2.
Yeah. So another thing would be that when a dog has difficulty and you can't figure out how to teach a certain lesson, people always say, "Well, simplify," but maybe still can't do it. So I don't like to use the word simplify, because it might be simpler, but it doesn't mean he understands it. So I use the word clarify, make it clear. You want to make it clear what is the lesson, make it clear. And If you make it clear, he's going to understand the lesson and you're going to move forward. If it's not clear, you have trouble.
Yeah.
You've got your hands full with something, and generally speaking, you don't move forward. You create problems. You go home, you're angry at yourself. The dogs...
Oh, those are the worst drives.
No, who likes that? But it happens. You see it almost every training session. Somebody gets in over their head. They get mad. They get frustrated. They start almost abusing the dog, and I can't tolerate it. I hate it. It's poor training, and you can't go forward. So the word is, make it clear to the dog what you want. If they don't understand it, make it easier. If they don't understand it, make it easier. Make it so they do understand. So maybe it's a channel mark, and they keep getting out. Throw a white bumper in the middle and make them get it. Do you get that one now, buddy? I mean, you make it so they understand. Yeah. Period. It's a critical way of teaching.
You try to make it so easy they can't fail. Not can they do it, can they not fail?
Exactly, because otherwise you can't get out of it in one piece. You get out, and the dog, and you have depreciated the relationship you have with them, and they haven't learned anything, and they've gone maybe backwards in their training.
Yeah. Trying to think of number 4.
Did I say 5?
You said 5. There's probably a lot, but we can. If you got one more, we can end on that one, or we can end here. I got more questions.
I think these having, in a general way, having expectations that are not realistic on what your dog can do. And if you watch, there will be a training session, and maybe you're standing on the side. Maybe the dogs are doing a certain test. You say, I'd like to try that. But your dog's not ready, but you want to see if they can do it. Well, now what are you doing? You're taking up everybody's time. The dog's not learning anything. You're getting frustrated. You start to think your dog is stupid, which it may not be, but you're the stupid one because you've attempted something you shouldn't have done, and you've injured your dog in a certain way as far as training is concerned. You've made yourself feel bad. Maybe everybody else thinks they're not happy. It's a bad situation. Don't have an expectation that's not realistic, because it ends up badly.
That's good.
It's very common though.
Yeah.
I'd like to try that. I think my dog can do that, but they can't.
Yeah.
And then you have no plan B if they can't either.
So do you, this is probably like an instinct thing for you, but for some folks, a lot of times I don't understand why this is so hard. Like, do you have advice for people that maybe don't even know how to tell if their dog can and cannot do it?
Yeah, the advice is ask somebody that knows. Because if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And when you don't know, ask. Yeah. People will tell you.
Yeah. Very good. So let's turn. I've been trying to theme this whole series that we're doing for the next couple months here is on the proper way to teach. I'm saying water, because I don't have a better word for it, because I've been trying to think like the water progression to being able to do any mark. I'm going to just use that as a rough term. And for me, I understood maybe a basic cheating single. I understood the dog should go straight to the mark. But I had no understanding of how I would have a progression or a program that I would follow. And I can't even remember how I found, I'm sure it was because I watched your YouTube videos and I went to your website and I saw water fundamentals. And I purchased water fundamentals. And you do swim by it a little bit different than I think I've seen a lot of people do it. I think that... go ahead.
Stop just a second.
Yeah.
The swim by, bring that up later, because there's a lot to be said about that's not understood. Okay, go back to your...
Yeah. And we can do swim. We can talk about your about swim by in general, and maybe specifically the way that that you do it, which I won't get into. I'll let you explain it. But I bought your advanced retriever. I can't remember what the name of the advanced retriever was. And watching the progression of how you taught the water fundamentals into that, there were a lot of really, really good drills that completely changed the way that I taught how to be respectful around water and how to understand how to actually get to the really difficult mark. And I'll never forget, I don't remember if it was you or maybe it was Mary that did this video of all Shadow's like really good marks from his derby career.
We got to stop.
Yeah,
for a
you want some
second.
water?
I need it. I need a little. Can I get something to?
Get your water or sparkling?
Yeah, there's a Sprite or something in there. Oh, that Mary put that together. That was really nice.
Oh yeah, the video.
Yeah, of the.
Well,
of
let's not
Shad-
talk about anything until we're recording again. That's one thing I've learned about podcasts. I don't talk to anybody about anything beforehand, because then we just have to rehash something that we've already talked once.
Yeah.
Are you guys enjoying it?
Yes.
It's fun.
I want to know, did you place in that Madison Derby?
I did not. I got a jam.
Okay.
We had the biggest hunt.
No, that's okay.
He
You did the last series.
yeah, we completed. We did it. It was my one and only derby.
Really, is that true?
Yeah, my dog. We went and we ran the Grand, and he passed the Grand, and then a week later he lost his hearing, and that was it. So now he's a 3-year-old fox puppy that can't hear. And he was really nice, but he still's nice. He's my girl's dog. So I remember this series. It was on YouTube. I think Mary did this, where it was all of Shadow's great marks through his derby career. And there was this one mark. It looked massive, and I remember watching him make some, like what I know now as a person that's trained more dogs through this, like watching him make the right decisions about how he was going to get to this mark, and it blew my mind. And I was like, actually, going along with this, I went to a qual at Horicon. This was just a qual at Horicon at Wissam. And you've been there, I'm assuming. They're big tech water that's like on that big hill. And it is the most daunting looking water. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking out and watching a dog run this mark that was like 400 yards and clipped 3 points and missed 1 point. And the dog did it right. And I was like, how in the world do you teach a dog to do that? And then when I saw your series, I was like, okay, these are all the little building blocks that you do. But what amazed me is that all the drills that you did, that you showed in this video series, were like 30 to 40 yards. And it was just breaking down all the components.
Correct. Yeah.
And I loved it all, and I follow most of it to this day. I've added some things that I like to do. And because I primarily came from the hunt test game, and there's little differences that, not the foundation, but just the types of marks that you throw is just different. But my point is, there's 2 drills that I wanted to talk about, the development and what they are, which is the 7 bumper lining drill, which you have on YouTube. I think you've shown that not even
frequently, yeah.
And then you have the focus drill that I really, really like and think it just, that to me was about clarity. Mm-hmm. Like, it is very clear what you're asking the dog to do. So could you set up maybe what the 7 bumper lining drill is, and then talk about how did you come up with that, or did you see somebody else that was doing it?
No, it's interesting how I came up with it. I was the 7 bumper lining drill is a beautiful drill, because what it teaches is to look somewhere and go there. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And by doing that often, you develop the habit. Look and go there. Don't look there and then go off somewhere else, which is what many dogs do. But I was doing some pre-national training one time out west with another trainer, and it was the amateur national, so there was clients. And there was a lady that was qualified, and she was going to run her dog in the national. But he wouldn't go on some blinds. And this other pro said, "Bill, can you help me out here? I mean, this well, this thing starts tomorrow and this dog's not going.
Oh, he
on
was
blinds.
no going. Just
There's
no
no going.
Yeah.
He'd look out and for the client, for the lady that owned the dog. So I took 3 white bumpers and I just put them out about 10 feet. And I said, well, see if you can get the 3 10-foot blinds. And dog got one, got the other one. I said, now try one. Bang, off it went. Just took that little bit of success. And I thought, I'm going to figure out how to use that concept. And then I decided that I really liked the idea. Look and go where you're looking. So the 7-bumper lining drill on land teaches a dog to hold that line past all these other more attractive, shorter.
The suction point is the hunt. I don't know if the field trialers call it, but we all call that suction. You
Right.
got all these things that want to suck the dog.
Yeah, but let's pretend it's on water. The tendency is to like
cave
you
in.
say, suck to the
Yeah.
shore. And this teaches you go past every interesting thing until you get where you're going. But it's so valuable because you can teach a dog to angle a channel, angle a hillside, angle a ditch, angle over a canoe. I mean, you can teach angles that are just virtually impossible to train other ways except through a lot of pressure. So the 7-bumper lining drill to me is a really valuable tool, and it's easy to do. And once a dog catches onto it, they love it.
Yeah.
They just love it because they get to do it, they understand it, it means something. And you can develop the language. That's it, right there, ready, go. And that language takes over on marks and blinds later on when you're doing these bigger tests. But you're teaching the language right in your 7-bumper lining drill and other drills as well. But that's the basic. The 7-bumper lining drill gets the language of look where you're going. It's not like, oh, where should I look? The Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder
Yeah.
idea. Yeah. and because it's not confusing. You look at it and you go. And
Yeah.
it's really a beautiful thing. So that's the beginning of the language that teaches a dog to go where they're looking. But then when you're talking about these big, massive marks, you have to combine the skill of looking and going where you're supposed to go and being able to think straight when you get there. You don't want a dog that's so mechanical that they can't make these choices and decisions. So you want to put a dog in training in a position to make a choice. And if they make the right choice, off they go and everybody's happy. And if they make the wrong one, then there's a correction. And it's essential to look for those situations, to put the dog in a position where he gets to choose what he's going to do. And that's a learning experience. A lot of dogs never get that. They're not trained that way. So I think that's a critical point to allow a dog to make choices. Some dogs are so mechanically trained they can't make a choice. So if they can't think straight.
And a good example of that is when we ran, you probably don't remember, but we ran the Madison trial. It was a contrary mark where the dogs went and there was a channel that went this way. There was a long skinny pond that went this way and they were running down it and the mark was thrown from the end of the channel to kind of the center of the channel. And I just saw derby dog after derby dog run down there, get in that channel and be like, I got to swim to the end of it. Then they would swim to the end of that channel. Then they would come up on the wrong side of the gun and either make the correction or go back. But your dog didn't do that.
Well, there's a difference between, you'll watch, especially even in the open stake, if you put birds in certain places, a dog gets so water oriented, they just swim to the end of the pond. They're not even thinking where the bird actually is. Yeah. And I don't like to see that.
Yeah.
It's sort of fear-based to start with.
Well, it could be repetition-based too. Because I didn't know that you should throw contrary marks until I saw that mark at a derby. And I went, oh, I better start doing things the opposite of what is, in my mind, the good thing.
Don't do it too much, though.
Yeah. But you got to do some of it or they don't feel comfortable to do it.
Well, Yes, that's what we have. One of the things that I do virtually every day is what we call a wide drill. And that encompasses an angle in, an angle back, a flat throw, and they learn that way to just go where the bird falls. You don't have to, if you do that, you don't have to worry.
Now, are you doing that in different places or pretty much on a mowed field most of the time? Or are you?
Oh, very different places.
Yeah, so you go to like a point and stand on a point and do it or whatever. Maybe not a point. I'm just using some random feature. Yeah.
That's a crucial part of my training. It's in the beginning stages. The wide drill has just 3 birds. They're very basic, and it's just basically it's used at. That's the first place you actually teach a dog to handle on a mark is during a wide drill. You don't want to start handling at 250 yards. It doesn't work very well with a real young dog. So But with the wide drill, I've done wide drills with up to 6 birds in various places, and then combine all 6 of them as a multiple at the end. So a dog has to develop memory along with the wide drill, and and then even blinds through the wide drill. It can be an extremely difficult and highly developed training scheme for advanced dogs also, not just the beginning wide drill, but the advanced wide drills.
Yeah.
Very, very crucial.
I have 2 questions based on what you said. One is, are you doing 7-bumper lining drills? How often are you doing that after like the initial, I'll just say transition phase? Like, are you coming back to it weekly, daily? Like, how often are you doing
2 or 3 times a week.
2 or 3 times a week.
No matter what age they are.
Yeah.
Fundamentals. Here's a crucial thing in dog training in my mind. A lot of dogs get through what we call basics or fundamental training, and they never do those drills ever again. Fundamentals are the most important part of training there is, and many dogs do not have sound fundamental training, and B, once they have finished fundamentals, they never go back to them again. It's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
They should be reviewed all the time.
Yeah.
That's just like if you know anything about football, forgetting blocking and tackling after you've learned how to block and tackle.
Yeah.
It's just not done.
Yeah.
The basics are huge.
Yeah.
If you want to really be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, second question. You talk about dog making decisions. Do you have, like a lot of people, I think they say this because it's easy to communicate something like, hey, when you're throwing marks, you should make sure your dog has 70 or 80% success in their marks, like where you're not having to interfere with them. Do you have any sort of like, I mean, I'm sure it's not a percentage because I'm sure it's a lot of feel, but like, what are you looking for? How do you manage like them making decisions and making good decisions versus making the wrong decision and correction? Like, how are you monitoring that through a week of retraining?
Well,
and that's not a very good question, but do you get where I'm kind of going?
I think you're saying, I used to call it the 80-20 rule. You know,
oh, okay. Maybe that was you that I learned it from. I don't know.
I wrote a Field Trial News article about it one time. I said, it's you can't have a dog that's failing all the time. It's not good for them. They don't develop their confidence. You don't get to practice the skill because you're all the time working because they've made a mistake and you're redoing, and it's a mess. You want to have mostly success, but you don't want 100% success because they have to learn the wrong way is not the good way. Yeah. They have to learn that too. But most of the time they should be successful so that everybody's happy. It makes you happy. The dog likes to be successful.
So you still follow a pretty good 80-20 rule.
I don't think of it that way because as really good training is very smooth.
Yeah.
There's very, very few mistakes because you're inching along and you're you're feathering things, and it's very clean and clear. When you see dogs that are constantly in trouble and yelping and
Yeah.
that's not good training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to keep the rungs of the ladder really close.
Yeah. So
go ahead. You're gonna say
no,
something?
it's just not good to have a dog that's in trouble all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You gave the answer I figured you were going to give, but, I just was curious if maybe you throw something in left field for me. You never know. So as a former pro trainer, obviously one of the most successful amateurs, what do you, like, how do you live your life in it now? Like, you have one dog, you're here in Wisconsin, I believe you live in Texas. Like, what's your, do you need to take it or you want to? He's going to throw it in the garbage is what he looks like he's about to.
Mr. and Mrs. Spam.
Mr. and Mrs. Spam, yeah. Do you like Spam?
I haven't had Spam in a long time.
Anyway. So what does the year look like for Bill?
Well, I have Rainbow now, which I'm concentrating on. And I have other things besides dog training that I do. One of them is make, videos. But I'm very involved in photography, and I have been, basically my whole life. My mother didn't let me have a dog, but she let me have a camera.
I have a camera.
So that's been a big part of what I do. But I train every day.
Yeah.
Almost every day.
Yeah.
Now, some dogs don't need training every day. The one I have does.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What does your typical day look like? Is it pretty standard with everybody else, or do you?
No, I don't know. We usually have a little training group, and we usually start first thing in the morning. And like now, maybe we train till 10 o'clock and then come back and 3 or 4 o'clock and do some more. Something like that.
Yeah.
But if you have a big training group, you can train all day.
Yeah.
Even no matter how many dogs you have.
Because it just takes all day.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge. So how many people are you training with? Like,
I think there's seven or eight dogs in our group.
Yeah, that's a good number.
Yeah, you can get everybody.
But the dogs also that ran get enough of a break that they're recharged.
Right.
That's something I've always struggled with. Is I have 3 or 4 of my own dogs that I'm training at a time. And if I have one other person with me, I'm trying to rotate them through to give them all a break before we can get another set in before because then you get to the diminishing returns just because they're zonked. But you've driven however long, you want to try to get in as much as you can. That's something I've had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. So I don't have that difficult. I'm never driving to train.
Yeah.
I'm always close to training.
Yeah.
Like right here where we are now. I mean, I don't even have to start the car. I just walk out and
do it.
Training.
So how long are you here for? Or how long have you been here?
A week.
1 week. So you go a week somewhere and then you go to another place?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It just depends. It's always different.
Yeah. Just train somewhere close to the next trial and then move on?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. You're being covert about it,
I don't have a schedule. I just kind of take things as they come.
So you're like the hobo.
Kind of.
You're kind of like the hobo.
Yeah, I used to be worse.
You used to be worse. Yeah. Because you had a van? Did you used to camp out of your van that you have, or do you still do that? Or
no, I have a similar situation. I have a camper.
Yeah, I have a camper. But I remember that you had a big Sprinter you were cruising around in that one trial, and I was like, see, Bill's the original hobo. He's just like me. I want to be just like Bill. The hobo is a compliment, just so you know.
Okay.
Because hobos actually worked. They weren't just bums. We got a tractor cruising around.
Oh, but we might have some hay getting cut.
You know how beautiful that sound is? As a dog trainer, when you hear that the guy starting to bale hay, you're like, oh my gosh, I can see my dog again.
Well, we've had this real tall cover and then rain and you couldn't cut. But if they're starting to cut now, that's great.
Yeah, you're probably thinking let's get out of this podcast and just start running dogs behind the behind the guy. But all right, well we've been going a long time here. But tell me a little bit about the next drill that I really enjoyed, which is the focus drill. How did that come to be, and do you even still do it? Well,
now when you say the focus drill, what do you?
That's what you called it in your video series.
No.
Hey, is that Rainbow?
Yeah.
She needs to realize that that's a good thing for her. She'll actually be able to see the marks now. But anyway, so what you used to do, maybe you still don't do this, but you would put, like, let's say there's a gunner, and the bird was thrown, let's just say 30 yards. You would put a bumper at the feet, a white bumper in the edge of the water, at the foot of the gunner. Then you'd put one more, a little bit other, and then another one that pretty much was 50% of the mark. And you would throw an orange bumper, and the dog had to learn to not go to where those white bumpers were, but had to swim past those, just like the 7-bumper lining drill, to an orange bumper. I take it you don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But I wasn't sure exactly how to say it. But let's say you have a 7-bumper lining drill, and they know to go to the last one. So the mark then would be deep. Rainbow, be quiet. Be quiet. That's, hey, man. So it's just a progression. So it teaches them not to cut it in short, and it's great if you're teaching like a channel mark, so they have to angle the channel, and it's a beautiful drill to do.
Yeah.
I do it. I don't do it all the time, but I do it when I'm trying to teach a dog to angle across a channel, especially because it's very hard to teach.
Yeah.
Because they get in the channel and then they want to cut in.
Yeah.
And I want them to carry that angle.
Yeah,
So,
it's a beautiful drill because to me, it makes it so clear what they're supposed to do and not do.
and when they make the mistake, it's obvious.
It's obvious.
And they know they've made it. So it's a great drill.